One of the things that I think has helped me out mentally with building things is the fact that I tried to build something and it failed massively. I think that was actually like probably more formative than I realized at first. And I think I didn't realize it as much until Peter Levels built a plane game using an LLM. Um, that blew up in a way that I didn't really see coming, and that kind of made me laugh because it kind of highlighted a specific camp of people on software development Twitter and just kind of like in general that I think are altogether fairly harmful, even if they're just mainly just annoying. Also, my dogs are joining me for this recording. You can see one laying there. There's another one under my feet, and I think the other one's on the couch somewhere. So if you hear stomping around, that's them. So last year, and I've talked about this at length in other videos. Last year, I shut down a cybersecurity SaaS that I spent like over a year and a half building. I dropped a ton of money on infrastructure and a ton of time developing this SaaS program. It was a threat intelligence platform for gathering information about malicious infrastructure. I learned a ton just from writing the code. That was valuable. I learned even more by the SaaS failing. I learned a lot about the fact that marketing is like 90% of your success, marketing and sales, and pivoting and figuring out ways to like create something that people will actually use is like 99% of the rest of it. So those were all valuable lessons. And I only could have learned most of those lessons. Honestly, I probably only could have learned all of those lessons by actually building something and putting it out in public. Um, Somebody who has done this way more often than I have is Peter Levels, or Levels IO on Twitter. A guy that I don't typically agree with a ton, honestly, about like mostly political stuff, but somebody who has shipped like several dozen different web applications over the course of like a decade or so. So somebody who like actually knows about how to like ship things, how to market things, has created obviously a huge audience, and he's pivoted in different directions over the years, but he decided to build a game. And I use the term game kind of like lightly. It is a game. You can play it. You can jump on and play it anytime. You fly a little plane around in kind of like a voxel environment and you shoot balloons. It's multiplayer in that like multiple people can connect at a time and fly around. It just that's it, really. He built it all with an LLM. He doesn't know anything about like building games. He didn't know anything about, I think he used 3JS for like the 3D environment, and he used Python for the netcode. He admits that it's imperfect. His netcode is literally just updating the coordinates of every single player every 100 milliseconds. If you've ever played a video game, that's pretty rough, and he admits that. That's something that he talks about like very actively. He's like, "This is slow. This is not perfect. I'm building it in Python, and he's never like released stuff like this before." When I first saw the game, I hopped on it. I shot a couple of balloons. I said, "Neat, pretty cool," and I moved on. When I first saw that he put a buy button on it, that link to Stripe, you could like pay $30 to get like a jet in the game, purely like cosmetic stuff. I was like, that's funny, and I moved on. Then I got back on Twitter and I saw that people were pissed. Like they were so mad that he was trying to cash in on this. They were so mad that he was calling himself a game developer. I mean, you would have thought he got on Steam and just shotgunned every indie developer that has ever put out a game on Steam. Except when you look into it, none of these people, for the most part, there were a couple of exceptions, but none of these people had actually released anything. They weren't indie game developers. They were people who said that they developed games. Some of them had actually developed games. Some of them were like notable game developers. I'm not necessarily talking about them. The majority of those people, no projects linked to their name. You look into it, they may have built something and they're just using pseudonyms. Tend to doubt it though, because there's this subsection of people, especially online, who have tons of opinions about building and tons of opinions about other people's projects and tons of opinions about code. And then you look into it and it's really just aesthetics. They really just want to appear to be people who have lots of strong opinions about things, but nothing actually exemplifying that they know what they're talking about. A lot of them will use, the typical excuses of, I build tons of projects, I just use a pseudonym, or I've built tons of projects, but they're all for work and I can't talk about them because of NDAs. I doubt either of those two things are true. Honestly, I think most of them probably haven't built anything, because I think something that comes from building stuff, especially difficult stuff, typically you get humble. Now, there's an opposite side of the coin after you've been building stuff for a long time where you think that you're a god, and that's really annoying, but like those people have at least earned it. When you start building things and you actually release stuff, especially when they fail, like my stuff did, you get a lot of humility out of that. You're typically not hopping online just shitting on everybody else's stuff. You're typically going to be a little bit more humble, and you're going to come to the people who are actually shipping stuff with kind of like a camaraderie of like, oh, cool, you ship stuff, I ship stuff. Like, this is something that we're both kind of struggling through. These people don't have that. And it makes me doubt that they've really actually built anything or released anything. Because again, the people that I've met that have built stuff are typically a little quieter. They're typically a little bit more humble, and they're typically continuing to ship stuff. So when I saw all of the kind of hate on this, a lot of it came from code snobs, people who were like, oh, well, how could you possibly release something that's imperfect publicly and like charge people for it? One, he advertised how bad the netcode was. You could hop on and play for free and see how bad the netcode was. He talked about how he was going to perfect it. Can you sit down? That's my dog stomping around. He talked about how he was going to fix it later and how he's like learning the stuff as he goes, but like it was actively advertised how bad the netcode was. So it's kind of silly to pretend like there's anything like malicious here. Like he put a buy button on because he knew people would buy a jet, and people bought a jet. They made that choice to buy a purely aesthetic item or a purely cosmetic item in a game that just barely exists. Who cares? Doesn't matter. The people that are mad that he's probably minted like thousands of dollars within 24 hours off of a cosmetic item in a game that he built with an LLM. That's kind of a silly thing to be mad about when you could be doing the exact same thing. Then there were the game developers. And the game developers I've got a little bit of, I guess, respect and pity for. Those people go through a lot. That is an incredibly difficult industry to be in. It is an incredibly difficult job to have. It's incredibly unstable, very, very underpaid. There's tons of overworking within that industry. And for those people to go through all of that and then get on Twitter on their very rare break and see that a guy who has never built a game in his entire life just shipped something to Prod and immediately had tens of thousands of people playing it and immediately started minting thousands of dollars. Okay. Even if it's not necessarily logical, I get being salty about that. I probably would be too. Like, being honest, I get that. And those people have actually shipped stuff. Like, game devs are some of the most intense and intelligent folks that are out there. Like, their style of software development is so completely like removed from the average JavaScript like slop developer. It's like it's a different world. So those people like actually know what they're talking about. They've actually shipped stuff, and like again, I kind of get why they'd be a little salty. But I think making all of this hang and just like blowing up about the fact that like some dude just decided that one of his fun little side projects was going to be building like a fun little game, and he put a straight button on it. Who cares? Go and build stuff. That's the one thing that I got from it. I was like, Peter just shipped something. He's also got another project where like he's got a web-based emulator for like Windows XP or something like that on his website, which is like kind of cool. He's just kind of building stuff for the sake of it, because if you're making $300,000 a month with a solo business, you can kind of get away with that. Like he's in that space now. Not a world that I can kind of relate to, but that's where he's at. So like he's just kind of building stuff for fun. And for people to like blow up the internet about that, just getting as mad as I saw some people, ooh, that's silly. I feel like we could probably ship a lot of projects instead of just talking angrily about other people's work. But I don't know. That's really about it. I think if you get anything out of the situation, just go build stuff and ship it out in public. That's what I'm going to do. I've got like 30 new ideas just from watching all of the blow up about all of that. So that's what I'm going to go do. Go ship stuff. Take it easy. Peace.